We are beginning this investigation not in a kitchen, but at a crime scene of logistics, a scorched earth theater where the most lethal weapon wasn't made of iron, but of sodium. To look at a Roman legionary's ration during the Punic Wars is to perform an autopsy of power, a forensic deconstruction of how a republic forced the human body to perform the impossible. Imagine a soldier standing on the shifting sands of North Africa or the frozen passes of the Alps. His entire existence is tethered to a small crystalline ration that dictates whether his heart continues to beat or his muscles seize in the heat of battle. This isn't just seasoning, it is a chemical leash. If Hannibal Barca represented the brilliance of tactical genius, the Roman Senate represented the cold, calculating weight of resource monopoly. We often credit the gladius for Rome's dominance, but the sword only reaches as far as the stomach allows. By controlling the salt pans of Ostia and weaponizing the very biology of their soldiers, Rome turned a dietary necessity into a strategic chokehold. To understand how a city-state broke a Mediterranean superpower like Carthage, we have to look past the shields and into the mess kit. Today, we are analyzing this historical menu as an autopsy of power. To understand the Roman military machine, one must stop viewing the legionary as a hero and start viewing him as a biological asset. In the mid-Republic, the salarium, the salt allowance, was not a culinary luxury, it was the structural glue of the state. As historian Pliny the Elder later reflected, the very highest character of life is personified in salt. But for a soldier facing the Punic threat, that character was one of total dependency. Rome's social hierarchy was mirrored in the distribution of this mineral. While a senator in the city might enjoy salt-cured delicacies from distant shores, the soldier's ration was a calculated minimum, precisely measured to prevent the systemic collapse of a man marching 20 miles a day under 60 pounds of kit. The labor behind this meal was an invisible engine of suffering. Every grain of salt in a legionary's leather pouch was the product of back-breaking evaporation work at the Via Salaria, the salt road. This resource was so vital that the Republic's first major infrastructure projects were designed specifically to secure it. This wasn't merely about flavor, it was about labor hierarchy. By controlling the salt pans, the Roman elite controlled the ability of the peasantry to preserve food, and by extension, their ability to survive a winter or a campaign. In the mess hall, this translated to a rigid psychological signaling. The state provides the salt, therefore the state owns your sweat. This controlled excess was a form of authority. During the Punic Wars, salt was frequently used as a strategic lever. When supplies were squeezed by Carthaginian blockades, the hierarchy tightened. The officers, drawn from the landed gentry, maintained access to better preserved meats, while the rank and file relied on Bucellatum, a rock-hard biscuit, and salt-heavy porridges. The brilliance of Roman logistics lay in its ability to standardize this mineral intake. By ensuring a steady, if meager, supply of sodium, Rome could keep its human engines running in climates that would have withered an army with less rigorous supply lines. The religious and political signaling was equally potent. Before a meal, a small portion of salt and grain was often cast into the fire as a sacrifice to the gods. This ritualized the resource, turning a chemical necessity into a civic duty. To eat the salt of the Republic was to enter into a contract of blood. It created a saline bond between the soldier and the state. To desert was not just a military failure, but a breaking of a sacred physical covenant. In this context, the mess hall becomes a laboratory of social engineering, where the menu was designed to strip away individual identity and replace it with the endurance of the collective.
To truly understand the Roman soldier's endurance, I have to step away from the maps and into the grueling reality of their kitchen. Recreating the Bucellatum, or Roman hardtack, is my first encounter with the sheer physical resistance of this diet. I'm mixing nothing but whole wheat flour, a dash of water, and a heavy, calculated dose of salt. As I knead the dough, it feels less like baking and more like masonry. The dough is stubborn, dense, and heavy. In the ancient world, this wasn't done in a quiet kitchen. It was done by soldiers already exhausted from building a fortified camp, using heavy stone hand mills to grind their grain under the sun. I'm shaping these into thick, flat discs and baking them at a low temperature for hours. The goal isn't a soft crumb, it's total dehydration. The result is a biscuit so hard it could arguably be used as a blunt force weapon. When I try to bite into a piece of this dry Bucellatum, I immediately understand the judgment calls an ancient cook had to make. You can't just eat this, you have to strategize. To make it edible, I have to soak it in Posca, the ubiquitous drink of the legions. Making Posca involves mixing water with soured wine or vinegar and, once again, a pinch of salt. It's a sharp, acidic, and salty concoction. As I dip the rock-hard biscuit into the vinegar water, I watch the liquid struggle to penetrate the dense fibers of the grain. This is the sensory reality of the Punic Wars, the smell of sharp vinegar, the grit of stone-ground flour, and the persistent drying sting of salt on the tongue. The physical cost of this meal is staggering. As I attempt to march while consuming only these rations, the biological reality sets in. Salt triggers thirst, and in the arid landscapes of Sicily or Iberia, managing that thirst was a matter of life and death. I feel the dryness in the back of my throat, a constant reminder of the state's control over my hydration. Sourcing these ingredients today is easy, but for a Roman logistics officer, the time cost was immense. They had to coordinate the movement of thousands of tons of salt alongside the grain, ensuring that the chemical balance of the army never faltered. Watching the biscuit finally soften into a soggy, vinegar-soaked mass, I realized that this was the high-stakes reality of the mess hall. The cook had to decide, do we use the precious wood to bake more bread, or do we save it for warmth? Do we add more salt to preserve the meat longer, knowing that it will drive the men to drink more water from possibly poisoned wells? Every meal was a tactical gamble. The exhaustion isn't just in the muscles, it's in the constant nagging effort to turn raw, preserved materials into something the human body can actually process. You don't just eat this meal, you survive it. This recreation proves that Roman dominance wasn't built on culinary delight, but on a structural mastery of preservation that allowed them to outweight and outmarch every opponent.
After recreating the labor, the chemistry, and the sheer physical resistance of the legionaries' ration, the evidence is undeniable. We have completed our autopsy. The taste of this meal, the aggressive drying sting of sodium, and the sharp bite of vinegar confirms that power in the Roman Republic was not an abstract concept, but a physiological one. The salarium was the ultimate instrument of control. By standardizing salt, Rome didn't just preserve its food, it preserved its hierarchy. The labor required to produce it revealed a society that viewed human energy as a resource to be mined, and the excess of salt in the soldier's pouch communicated the absolute authority of a state that could dictate the very salinity of a man's blood. What we've uncovered in this mess hall is the blueprint for an empire. The Punic Wars weren't just won by the tactical genius of Scipio or the grit of the infantry. They were won by a logistics system that understood that the one who controls the salt controls the endurance of the world. Hannibal had the elephants, but Rome had the chemistry. When we look at these ancient remnants, we aren't just seeing a primitive diet. We are seeing the calculated architecture of a superpower that transformed a simple mineral into a weapon of global expansion. We don't just cook ancient food, we decode the civilizations behind them.